Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Welcome to today's video. Today's video is going to be my monthly installment of Would I Repurchase? So that is a series I do here on my channel where I randomize 10 palettes from my collection. Then I talk about whether I would or would not repurchase them. It's a pretty straightforward series. So if that sounds good to you, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't yet. I would love it if you stuck around, but with all that, let's just get started. All right, like I said, this is a pretty straightforward series. I'm gonna link some creators down below who also do this series. We all kind of have our own spin on it. The way that I like to do it is talk about the palettes in my collection as if I was going to repurchase them. Some people like to do it where if the palette was newly launched, would they still be interested in the palette? I like to take the approach that if the palette is in my collection and then overnight it just disappeared, poof, it was gone, would I repurchase that palette? So I am going to randomize 10 palettes from my Tiny Decisions app. I'm going to remember to screen record it this time, and then I will pop it up. We've almost gotten through like my list of palettes, and then I'm going to have to go through and update it and add palettes, probably all the palettes that I purchased last year, etc., because this is pretty outdated. First, I wanted to get through these, but let's just go and see what the first one is that gets chosen. It is Glaminatrix Rich Romantic. Number 2 is What's Up Beauty Monsoon palette. We have Odens Eye Mighty Monster. Natasha Denona, I Need a Nude. The Chantecaille Butterfly Quartet. Oh, I lost track of how many I'm at. McGrath Subliminal. Is that? I'm just going to pull a couple more, and then if we reach 10, we reach 10. McGrath Sublime. Zoeva Melody. Let's do 3 more. Kaja Neutral Moment. 2 more. Natasha Denona Mini Star. 1 more. And if we're past 10, I won't talk about it. Natasha Denona, My Mini Dream. All right, so let me go pull those palettes and we'll talk about them. So that was actually 11 palettes. So I took out the Natasha Denona My Mini Dream and added it back to my wheel so we can talk about it next time. But I'm going to talk about these in the order that they were pulled. So first up is the Glaminatrix Rich Romantic palette. This is my favorite Glaminatrix palette, so I would absolutely 100% repurchase this. No questions asked. I love all the special shimmers in here. I love that you have neutral mattes with some pops of color, and the colors just happen to be my favorite color, which is purple. So yeah, this would be no question. I would 100% repurchase this palette, and I highly, highly recommend purchasing it if you don't have it yet. The second one is the What's Up Beauty Desert Monsoon. This is also my favorite What's Up Beauty palette. Well, it actually maybe Dragon Eye is, but when they only had Monsoon and the Geodes, I like this over the Geodes palette. Even though there's a blue in here, just like the shimmers a little bit more. The mattes tend to be the same across What's Up Beauty's palettes. They're easy mattes, so I'm not too upset about it. They're mattes that I'll use and make the palette more of just a one and done palette for me. You don't have to pull complementary palettes in, but I know not everyone loves that. I do just like this one better than the Geodes. I think I would repurchase it. What's Up Beauty is also one of my favorite brands. I have a lot of attachment to them. Not only do they have a great formula, but just, yeah, a lot of just sentimental reasons why I love this brand. So this one I would 100% repurchase as well. And then we get into maybe the not so much repurchase, the Odens Eye Mighty Monster. This was in collaboration with Annette. It is the last Odens Eye palettes that I purchased. And this is just when their formula seemed to really take a nosedive. I don't know what it is. I haven't tried anything since these palettes, but the quality was patchy. I really didn't love it at all, especially this teal, the purple. Like the neutrals were fine. I am going to use this palette, No Pan Left Behind style. I have a series on my channel where I'm attempting to do that with all of my palettes. And this is one that I've thought I probably will declutter. I don't know yet. I'm going to test it out and see. I do like the neutrals here. I do really love Annette as a creator, so I want to hang on to it. This is one that I'm on the fence about already. So if it disappeared from my collection, I just wouldn't even bother. I would not repurchase it. Natasha Denona, I Need a Nude. We're doing a lot of favorites because I'm a boring, basic, neutral person, and this is my favorite Natasha Denona palette. Probably my most used Natasha Denona palette, quite honestly. I use this palette all the time to do BYOPs. Like I will try to dupe out color stories, and a lot of the times the shades that I pull come from this palette. I did during holiday. I duped out the Makeup by Mario Ethereal Moonlight palette, the one with the blue, and a lot of the shades came from this. I'll link that video up above. I did end up purchasing that palette, but shh. Anyways, this one I love. I've taken this one traveling with me when I went to Arizona in January. This was the only palette that I took, and I think it's great. It's maybe boring, but it's one that I would get so much use out of, so I would repurchase it over and over again. Now we get into one of my more expensive palettes, one of my more luxury palettes. This is the Chantecaille Butterfly Eye Quartet. The packaging is so beautiful, but the inside is like womp womp. The inside sucks. The mattes are okay. They're kind of like this more sheer wash of color matte. Nothing makes me want to reach for this palette. The mattes are pretty on the eye. Like it is kind of that easy go-to matte, but then you have this duochrome here, and it's not my favorite type of duochrome. It's like a gold to green, and it's also, I just have so much indie that's better. Yes, sometimes you want something that's a little bit more subtle, but this is like it can't decide what it wants to be, and I just don't like the inside. The only reason I haven't decluttered it yet is quite honestly because of the packaging. So I don't know. I would not repurchase this, especially now that I'm trying to not spend as much money on makeup, be a little bit more mindful, and bring in things that I'm actually really, really going to love, like 100% and not just 50%. I would not repurchase this palette. Then we have two Pat McGrath palettes that were pulled. The first one being the first mothership, which is Subliminal. This is like the cool tone one that has the blue in it. And I really do like this palette. I do not give my mothership palettes enough love. I really, really need to. I did maybe like 18 months ago a video ranking all of my Pat McGrath palettes. I'll link that video up above. And during that time, I spent like 3 months testing all my Pat McGrath palettes before doing that ranking. But since then, I haven't really touched them all that much. They're a really nice formula. Like, they're not worth $130. Definitely wait until Pat McGrath does a 40% off sale. And even then, like, that's still kind of expensive for what this is. The mattes aren't beginner friendly. I think the mattes do take some blending out. They're not just effortless mattes, but the shimmers are really, really special. If you can get your hands on a mothership, I think it's really nice. But the brand just seems to be going more and more downhill. I just heard that, maybe I'm wrong, but I heard that Pat McGrath just became the makeup director for the new Louis Vuitton beauty brand that's going to launch. And that makes me worried about what direction Pat McGrath is going, the Pat McGrath makeup brand is going to in the future. As far as would I repurchase it, I'm just realizing that I didn't even give my answer to that. I don't think that I would. I don't think I'd shell out the money for the palette. It's a really nice palette. I like having it in my collection. I wouldn't declutter this palette, but if it disappeared, I don't think I'd want to spend the money to repurchase it. I kind of really want the Moonlit Seduction palette. That's like the last mothership. It's kind of like the one that got away. And I think if I was going to buy a mothership, I would purchase that one rather than repurchase this one. So that's going to go in the no pile. The next one I have is Mothership 2, which is Sublime. This was actually the first one that I purchased, and it has that stunning green shade in it. Here's what this one looks like. Again, very similar formula. I would say it performs exactly the same as Subliminal. The question is, would I repurchase it? And that just all comes down to color story. I think that I would repurchase this one. I think that I would. I have a lot of attachment to it, being that it's the first mothership that I purchased. I do really like this green here. I like the Blitz Astral shades. I like the mattes. I don't love that it has a black in here. Like, that's not a shade I'm really going to get use out of. But there's a reason that this was my first one when I had, I think at the time, 5 or 6 mothership palettes were out before I purchased one, and this was the one that I went with. So I think that says something about how much I like this color story. So I'm going to say yes, I would repurchase it. We have 3 more to talk about. The next one that I have is the Zoeva Melody palette. Do we remember when Zoeva was like a really big brand? Here's what this palette looks like. This palette went untouched in my collection for a long, long time. I finally pulled it out, I think into a Shop My Stash, because I wanted to get some use on it and finally try it out. I had heard so much about Zoeva. This palette was stunning. This palette was so great. I like kick myself for not trying Zoeva quicker. It is so beautiful. You have a lot here. You have some basic mattes, but you do have a lot of versatility with this palette and can do a lot of different looks. And it's neutrals, but neutrals done right. And by that, I mean, when you actually wear these different tones on the eyes, you can come up with different looks. They don't all look the same. I think that the shades were really well thought out and actually make a difference on the eye. I also think this is kind of a very similar dupe to the Anastasia Beverly Hills Nouveau palette. I see a lot of similarities, not just with this purple shade, which this is like a shimmer shade, but with some of the other like peachy tones here, you kind of have like this blue-green shade. I think that's like the shade Lily in the Nouveau palette. So I see a lot of similarities. I mean, this was obviously around way before the Nouveau. I'm not saying like ABH stole this design, but if you have this one and you've been thinking about getting the Nouveau, I don't think you need both. And this is really nice quality. I have a really nice time with this. Would I repurchase it? Yes. I think I would. I think I would repurchase this palette. I actually do like it quite a bit. So I'm going to say yes, I would repurchase this. Next, we go into Kaja. This is the Kaja stack in Neutral Moment. And like the name would suggest, it's a very easy trio. You have a very light matte, a mid-tone, and a deep dark neutral. Love this quad so much. I love that it's not overly warm tone. I love that it's not overly cool tone. It's just a neutral moment. I would repurchase this palette because I think it's perfect for travel. The Melt Petite stack is my go-to as far as traveling with like neutrals if I just need some basics, but this is like a close runner-up. Probably my favorite Kaja stack, to be honest. I think it is. I don't have too many. I have 3 or 4, but this might be my favorite as far as which one I grab for and use the most. So I would repurchase this. I like it a lot. Then last up, we have my Natasha Denona. This is the Mini Star palette. Don't know if they make this one anymore. Maybe not, but it's a really cute palette and it has 2 mattes, 3 shimmers. I think Natasha Denona does an excellent job with her mini palettes. Again, like you can do so many different looks with this 5-pan, and I think that that's great. I just don't like palettes when they're small, but you can really only get 1 or 2 different looks. Like you can only use this shimmer and have this be the star of the show, just this one. You can use all 3. This is a really nice 5-pan palette, and I struggle on saying that I would not repurchase this, but I don't think that I would. I just topped it up. I think it's a really nice palette, but despite that, it's just not my favorite Natasha Denona mini palette. So I'm gonna say no. I also have the full size star palette, so I don't necessarily need this. I don't think there's repeat shades, but this is just not one that I reach for that often. Formula's great. Still stand by everything I said. You can create multiple different looks with this. I have nothing bad to say about this palette, but like my gut is telling me that I would not repurchase this if it was to come down to it and it disappeared. So I don't know. I felt weird saying only positive things and then being like, no, I'm not going to repurchase it. But that's the truth. I would not repurchase it. So just a summary. Let's look at what I have. I have 4 that I would not repurchase. So the Odens Eye Mighty Monster, the Chantecaille Butterfly, the Natasha Denona Mini Star, and then the Pat McGrath Subliminal, the #1 palette. And then that means I have 6 that I would repurchase. The Kaja Neutral Moment Stack, Zoeva Melody, the #2 Mothership, the Sublime, then some of my favorite palettes in my collection, the Desert Monsoon, Rich Romantics from Glaminatrix, and Natasha Denona I Need a Nude. This is nice, a 6-4 split. I know I usually have like a half and half split, it seems like most of the time when I do these videos, but at least today, this month, most of them are yeses, because it's been sometimes a little bit more on the opposite scale where I would not repurchase them, and that never feels good. So I'm glad that a lot of these are really, really nice palettes that I love. Like most of the ones I said yes to were not like, yeah, maybe, I guess I would. They were absolutely yes, I would repurchase them, like the I Need a Nude, the Rich Romantics. I mean, any of them, if I was to say I was on the fence, would be the Sublime, but that's only because of the price. So most of these are like strong yeses, and I feel good about that. But that is going to wrap up today's episode of Would I Repurchase? Let me know down below if we have the same thoughts and opinions. Do you like any of these palettes that I said no to? Do you dislike any of the palettes I say yes to? I would love to hear all of your thoughts. But this is where I'm going to leave you all. I hope you're having a great one, and I will see you in my next video. Bye, everyone.